Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. India has become the world's second country after the United States to have more than 20 million COVID-19 cases. The country recorded over 357,000 new cases and more than 3,400 deaths overnight. In Pakistan, 161 people lost their lives to the virus and more than 3,300 tested positive in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.2 million lives while infecting over 153 million people. The US has downplayed the impact of Taliban attacks in Afghanistan as foreign forces begin to pull out. Speaking to reporters, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby said small harassing attacks over the weekend had no significant impact on the withdrawal. Kirby's statement comes after Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned of decisive action if retreating troops are attacked. Kyrgyzstan's Prime Minister Ulug'bek Maripov has signed an order to grant special status to its region bordering Tajikistan. During his visit to the Batken region, Maripov also announced rebuilding of wrecked homes and other incentives. Last week, 41 people were killed during the armed conflict with Tajikistan over the Batken region. At least 20 people have died after an overpass carrying metro train cars partially collapsed in Mexico City. Officials said 49 people were also injured after the bridge fell onto cars on a road below. The Mexico City mayor said the rescue operation has been suspended because more train cars could slam down onto the road. And in football, West Ham United beat Burnley 2-1 in a Premier League clash, keeping their hopes alive for next season's Champions League. Striker Michail Antonio scored a brace for the Hammers on his return from injury. The win lifts Hammers to 5th place with 58 points, just 3 behind Chelsea. These were the top stories. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. India has become the world's second country after the United States to have more than 20 million COVID-19 cases. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.2 million lives while infecting over 153 million people.
India recorded over 357,000 new cases and more than 3,400 deaths overnight. Country's opposition leader, Rahul Gandhi, has called for a nationwide lockdown. Over in Latin America, in a sigh of relief, Brazil's daily death toll fell below 1,000. The country is now close to signing a second contract with Pfizer-BioNTech for another 100 million doses of its vaccine. Meanwhile, Mexico hopes to finish vaccinating its entire population against COVID-19 by April 2022. In the U.S., the 7-day rolling average of new cases has fallen below 50,000 for the first time since October. Air travel in the U.S. hit its highest mark in more than 13 months, as nearly 1.67 million people were screened at the country's airport checkpoints on Sunday. Meanwhile, Florida lifted all restrictions, citing the effectiveness and availability of vaccines. Canada has recommended the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for people aged 30 years and over, despite blood clotting fears.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has recorded another 161 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the nationwide death toll has now risen to 18,310. The ministry said over 3,300 people contracted the virus overnight. It said the positivity ratio has declined to 8.98%. The caseload has topped 837,000, out of which over 733,000 have recovered. There are more than 86,000 active cases in the country. According to government data, more than 2.7 million people have been vaccinated in the country. Moving on now, the US has downplayed the impact of Taliban attacks in Afghanistan as foreign forces begin to pull out. Pentagon spokesperson said small harassing attacks over the weekend had no significant impact on the withdrawal. Speaking to reporters, John Kirby said the US Commander General in Afghanistan has response options for the protection of the troops. He said the relationship with the Afghan security forces is going to change after the withdrawal. Kirby said Washington is still working on the details of future ties, but he added it will be largely of a financial nature and the US is not going to have any troops on the ground. Kirby's statement comes after Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned of decisive action if retreating troops are attacked. Meanwhile, the Taliban say they have discussed the Afghan peace process with the Norwegian envoy in Doha. The US says North Korea needs to decide if it wants to engage diplomatically for the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. This comes a day after Pyongyang warned the US of retaliation to what it called Washington's hostile policy.
At a press conference in London, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Washington will see what North Korea actually does in the coming days. Speaking about Russia, Blinken said the US wants a more stable relationship with Moscow. But he reiterated Washington's desire depends on how aggressively the Kremlin decides to act. The diplomat also pointed out that the US does not aim to contain or hold China down. However, he added the West will defend the international rules-based order from what he called subversive attempts by any country. Meanwhile, China's envoy to the UN, Yang Jun, said Beijing hopes the US will emphasize more on dialogue rather than pressure.
Now, Kyrgyzstan's Prime Minister Ulukbek Maripov has signed a draft law to grant special status to its region bordering Tajikistan. The draft has now been sent to the parliament for approval. During his visit to the Batken region, Maripov also announced the rebuilding of wrecked homes and other incentives. The proposed law will provide the local authorities with the power to govern, control and make certain decisions themselves. Last week, nearly 50 people were killed during the armed conflict between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan over the Batken region. Egypt has signed a deal with France to buy 30 Rafale fighter jets. This comes after Dassault finalized a €2.5 billion agreement in January for the sale of 18 Rafales to Greece. In a statement, the Ministry of Defense said the deal will be financed through a loan to be repaid over at least 10 years. But it did not disclose the value of the deal or further details. French authorities were not immediately available for comment. The Human Rights Watch says France is encouraging ruthless repression in Egypt by signing the contract. Now moving to Myanmar, where 5 people, including an ousted lawmaker and 3 police defectors, have been killed in triple blasts in the Bago region. The blasts were triggered after a parcel bomb exploded at a house. Another police officer involved in the civil disobedience movement was wounded. Meanwhile, anti-regime protesters have once again taken to the streets in Mandalay and Yangon. An advocacy group says security forces have killed at least 766 civilians since the February 1st coup. Norway's telecom giant Telenor has fully impaired its Myanmar operation over the deteriorating security situation. The company's value in Myanmar comes up to $783 million. Now, at least 23 people have died after an overpass carrying metro train cars partially collapsed in Mexico City. Officials say 65 people were also injured after the bridge fell onto cars on a road below. Authorities said the rescue operation has been suspended because more train cars could slam down onto the road. Mexico City Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum termed the incident a terrible tragedy. She expressed solidarity with the victims and their families. Sheinbaum called for an investigation into the accident to identify the causes and define responsibilities. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, at least 14 people have been killed as heavy rains and flash floods hit Herat province. Authorities say a woman and 4 children are among the victims in the Adraskan district. Herat authorities said floods have also destroyed dozens of hectares of land and killed cattle. They said the neighboring districts of Obe and Karokh have also been affected. Officials added that scores of households have been evacuated and rescue operation is underway. In August, flash floods claimed more than 150 lives in 13 Afghan provinces. 9 Colombia protesters have called for a new mass rally despite the withdrawal of a tax reform bill. At least 19 people have been killed and more than 800 were wounded in several days of clashes. Authorities have detained 431 people and the government deployed the military in the worst affected cities. Meanwhile, truck drivers blocked avenues in Bacoda, Zipaquira, Bucaramanga and Barranquilla. They want the Duque administration to provide benefits for these sectors such as preferential gasoline prices. Earlier, Finance Minister Alberto Carrasquilla resigned after the public backlash over the tax reforms. China has taken over the presidency of the UN Security Council for the month of May 2021. In a press briefing, China's envoy Chang Jun stressed the need for upholding and practicing multilateralism. Chang said conflicts in Africa account for more than half of the situations on the Security Council agenda. China will convene a high-level open debate on 19th of May to address the root causes of conflict in Africa. The Security Council's presidency rotates every month among its 15 members. Beijing last held the body's presidency in in March 2020. Bill and Melinda Gates have parted ways and filed for divorce after 27 years of marriage. The couple announced their Twitter profiles separately. They said they will continue to work together for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The two said they do not believe they can grow together any longer as a couple. A joint petition for the dissolution of marriage was filed in King County Superior Court in Seattle. It stated that the marriage is irretrievably broken. The petition, which says the couple have no minor children, comes after the youngest of their 3 offspring recently turned 18. More news coming up in this news bulletin after a short break. Stay with us. 9 Colombia bees are enjoying their new digs in Barbosa, where tiny hotels provide rest after a busy day pollinating. The hexagonal structures are filled with a variety of bamboo canes and allow bees of all shapes and sizes. Colombia is the world's second most biodiverse country and boasts nearly 550 varieties of bees. As elsewhere in the world, the bees in the South American country are threatened by human activity. To protect the bees, the local metropolitan authority has made bamboo homes.
It's like a hotel because they're going to have a quiet moment in their room, which is one of these bamboo straws, before setting off again. They can either return to the same hole or find another and so on, and we keep on changing it. We'll clean it. If this were a regular hotel, I'd be one of the people cleaning the rooms.
The homes are built from wood and acrylic roofs to protect the bees from rain. They aim to protect species found in 10 municipalities of the metropolitan area of the Abura Valley.
Actually, these hotels for bees are small spaces. Spaces that require a minimum infrastructure that can be made with recyclable material. A space that seeks to generate an environment in which they can coexist, have healthy protection. We must recognize that globally bees are being negatively impacted and they are losing more spaces every day.
The use of pesticides and fertilizers is harmful to bees, so the tiny structures offer them natural spaces for survival. A famous New York City restaurant known for its signature meat-based and seafood dishes is going vegan now. Let's find out in this report.
11 Madison Park's most iconic dishes, like the sea urchin and lavender glazed duck, will not be available when it reopens on 10th of June. Instead, a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant, widely considered one of the best, will be offering a plant-based menu. The restaurant's chef and co-owner, Daniel Hum, has announced all the dishes will be made from land or marine vegetables. Ingredients would also include fruits, legumes, fungi, grains, and other plant-based diets. Hum says animal products were simply not sustainable. He says that although the vegan menu is risky, he wants to reinvent fine dining. The restaurant closed to the public last year when the world shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
With the New York City reopening in July, about 100 citizens took a Zumba class in Central Park to dance out of the prolonged stress. The report has more. New Yorkers set their eyes on dealing with the remainder of the pandemic and preparing for the post-coronavirus life. A week after the pandemic had arrived, the Zumba instructor Sol Alberion started teaching classes online from her living room. But she quickly realized she missed seeing her students in person. As soon as groups workout became an option, she took her roller speaker and organized the first session in Central Park.
I have the most touching stories that you can imagine. I have people fighting cancer. I have people that are unemployed, people that lost everything in the pandemic and even before the pandemic. So when they leave the class, it's like I just feel good with myself. I have the moments that I was able to just be happy, find joy.
The class became popular very quickly. One of the participants, Nam, who had taken the Zumba class for 8 years before the pandemic. He says the phrase like, "This class, it keeps me sane," is an understatement.
I think there was a lot of isolation that happened for me personally, for my friends, for even my roommates who couldn't see other people except the three of us, right? So it was incredibly isolating, and coming here, seeing people, interacting with people from 6 feet away, wearing masks, you know what? It felt more normalizing.
About 100 participants show up on weekend mornings and dozens on weekday nights. 25 people worked out with Alberion on a day when it was 15 degrees outside and snowing. European stocks are trading mixed as investors monitor global recovery prospects and a fresh round of corporate earnings. London's FTSE is leading gains, adding over 0.5%. The CAC 40 in Paris and Italy's FTSE MIB have both edged up fractionally. However, Frankfurt's DAX has dipped over 0.5% and the Pan-European Stock 600 slipped marginally. Earlier, stocks in Asia Pacific traded higher following a wave of positive sentiment at the Wall Street overnight. Major markets in China and Japan were closed for holidays. And now let's have a look at how the weather is doing around the world. That is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Take care.